Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever been browsing YouTube and you got recommended sports highlights videos? I'm talking like sports highlight videos of your favorite player, top 10 dunks, knockouts, goals, these types of things. Maybe the last time your favorite sports team did anything of significance, maybe won a championship. Well, chess also has these types of videos. And today's video is exactly that. Today I will be showing you something heinous that occurred a couple of days ago here in July of 2024. And that's all I've got to say about the introduction. Let's jump into the game. This game was played between Alexandra Goryachkina and Stavrula Tsolakido. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's a Greek name, so, it's a 50-50. We're actually going to be looking at the game from Black's perspective. Normally, we just look at the game universally from White's perspective, but we will be looking at it from Black's perspective. And this was a game played in a tournament in China. There's a tournament currently ongoing there. Let me just slightly adjust my camera here. It's a tournament going on in China, and it wasn't covered anywhere big, but it was sent to me by an anonymous source, and it's a fascinating game. Goryachkina, and by the way, their ratings are a little bit lower than standard because I think this was a rapid game. I think it was either 15 or 25 minutes. So Goryachkina, of course, is a top contender of women's chess. Also, we are going to be looking at this game without the evaluation bar. I like to do this every now and then so that some of you actually have to pay attention. White opened with d4, Black played knight f6, c4, g6, and already, pawn to g6 is kind of unique. I would say at the high level, e6 is what most people are playing nowadays, but Black plays g6 and then doesn't play the Grunfeld defense, which is a very cutting-edge opening, trying to strike back at White's center, voluntarily surrendering the center to the pawns, but then firing away at it from a distance like this. Black plays bishop to g7, e4, d6, and this is a King's Indian defense in its purest form. Now, the main line here is White developing the knight, Black playing castles, and then White playing bishop to e2. And ultimately, in the King's Indian defense, Black chooses to attack the center with the e-pawn, with the c-pawn, or not at all, and to play like kind of a KG setup, and later trying to get into a fight. But actually, in this game, White shows their cards first, and White plays this move pawn to f3. So White does not move the knight to f3, rather than choosing to put the pawn there. The idea is to repel anything from coming to g4. The idea is to support the center. The idea is to maybe trampoline these pawns forward with moves like g4, h4, h5. And also it's to develop the bishop comfortably to e3. This is called the Saemisch variation. S-A with the two little dots at the top. I don't know what that's called because I'm American and uneducated. M-I-S-C-H, Saemisch variation. Black castles, White plays bishop e3. And again, now Black essentially has to choose which way to attack the center. Again, you don't have to. You can kind of wait. But if you basically told me e5 and c5 were not possible, Black should probably just resign the game. I mean, you're just going to kind of sit here and wait to die. Black plays the move c5. And you can kind of see where this is coming from. There is a bishop here, so if White plays this move d5, Black in the future will have a very powerful bishop that will see the entirety of the board, which is why in this position White plays knight e2 and fights back for the center. Now, if Black takes, White will take with the knight and be very happy. You can fight back for the center, but there's bishop e2, and this type of setup for White is called the Maroczy bind. That's what it's called, Maroczy bind. And the point being, Black traded a c-pawn for a d-pawn, so actually the game became a Sicilian defense. That is completely meaningless to you. You are probably too low rated to understand the concept of transposing openings, but an opening can become a different opening on the first 5 to 10 moves, depending on what move order is taken. Basically, if you ever go to Google Maps and you go to a destination and there's 3 ways to get there, and by the way, have any of you experienced the fact that Google Maps has been lying to us? I'm not trying to start a conspiracy theory. That's not my point. I frequently go to Google Maps and it tells me a way is going to be like 4 hours and 30 minutes, and then it's like 5 hours, and it just keeps adding time, and it doesn't even apologize. It's like it sends everybody in one direction, Great band, by the way. Anyway, point being, in chess, you can get to the same destination despite taking different paths. That's essentially the point that I'm trying to make. As far as the relevance of this game, Black does not take on d4. Some of you who are keenly watching this and are not getting distracted by my rants about GPS systems will notice that there is a free pawn over here. And, at the low level, that is absolutely true. You can even trade the queen. And for like 9 out of 10 of you, this is 100% a free pawn because nobody is going to be able to justify fighting back. What black has to do here is get what's called compensation. So you compensate for being down a pawn with being active and having a very powerful presence of pieces. Too high level. I'm not trying to insult you. If you're sitting there going, what? I totally understand this. Stop insulting me. You don't. You're lying to yourself, and that's okay because, you know, the first order of business in getting better at chess is to pretend like you can think like the higher rated players. But to be honest with you, this absolutely feels like a free pawn. But white doesn't take it. White pushes forward in the center of the board because a very powerful center with a lot of defense looks very powerful. Black plays knight to e5, and white plays knight to g3, defending this pawn, preparing to put the bishop here, preparing a castle, and maybe preparing an attack. Now, fun fact, when knights stand on g3, b3, or b6, g6, all right? So when basically the knight is standing on the knight's column, right, where the knight is, right? The knight kind of took 2 moves to get there. Attacking it with a rook pawn is a very common positional technique. You just learned something after getting insulted. I'm a very kind of good cop, bad cop coach, right? So you kind of like to attack it with a rook pawn, even if the rook is gone. It's a very useful technique, which is why Stavrula plays h5. Now, white can play h4, and while that temporarily stops h4, this knight now is completely unguarded. So it just inherently feels a little bit weakening, which is why instead of that, white plays bishop e2, inviting the move h4, and actually volunteering to put the knight on f1. All of this has been played before. Again, a little bit too dank, a little bit too high level. But now Stavrula starts attacking the center of the board. She's looking to open things up, right? Get to that king before that king has a chance to commit itself somewhere. But now white plays this move bishop g5. Traditionally, you would not have played the move bishop to g5, because if you played bishop g5, I would have gone h6. If you tried to stay here, I would have gone g5. If you tried to stay here, I would have gone here, and then you've gone all the way to f2. But guess what happened? You put the pawn on h4. So now you don't have the pawn. It doesn't go backwards. So you're actually in danger of losing the pawn. Okay, pawn takes d5. Very nice move by white. Knight takes, not pawn takes. If you took with the pawn, you would close the queen's vision on d6. This also closes the queen's vision, but at least the knight can move, and the queen will have a vision on this pawn. Bishop e6, knight e3. White just making standard improving moves, defending the knight in the center of the board. But this move is a mistake. And if you had the patience to watch 7 minutes of this video and not click on something big and shiny in your sidebar, or go to a different website, now you will be rewarded. Because in this position, Stavrula, so lucky though, sacrificed her queen. That is a full queen. And you have to take it. Because if you don't take it, let's say you go here. I'm going to take the bishop. You take my bishop. I take your knight. I mean, you're just down a full piece. There's, you know, no questions asked. Being down a full knight in this position and king is in the center, very, very bad. Eval confirms that it's -5, if you could see it. Knight takes d5 is crazy. Essentially what she did is she waited for white to put a knight there. White in this position should have probably backed up. And you'll notice on the previous move, taking here would have been stupid because there is no other piece to take. But by playing this very natural kind of defending move, now you have a problem. So black gets a knight. White gets a queen. Black gets another knight. The material balance there is 3 points. However, what is important is the situation right now. The only reason that this is possible is because now the queen is hanging. So white has to defend the queen. Has to move it. On top of that, this pawn is hanging. So you're going to get another pawn, and it's going to come with a check. So you have now 2 knights and a pawn for a queen, and this bishop is hanging. So if white doesn't play a move to attack the knight, like white goes here, black will go here, have a knight, a bishop, and a pawn for a queen. That is 10-9. Actually, black is winning in that position, and black is winning by pieces, because black just took the whole store, right? Like they got everything. They got everything, and they're playing up, you know, they're playing against the queen. So they got a bunch of stuff. So queen b3, knight takes g2, king f2. Very logical. White is trying to win the knight back, because now if you take the bishop, I'm at least going to get the knight back. Now, if you try to save the knight, then I'm going to save my bishop. So what do? Do you play rook takes bishop, king g2, and you play like this? What do you do here? Or what, you know, knight takes g2, king f2, what do you do? We save the knight. Best move. We save the knight. White plays bishop e7. Attacks the rook. Pawn is hanging. This pawn is hanging. And then all of this is under attack. And in this position, Stavrula does it again. She sacrifices the rook. The knight removes another key defender of the white position, and white cannot take because of the fork. So you give up the queen and you give up the rook. This is crazy. And you take back the bishop. So now you got one of white's bishops, and now you got the other bishop. So the material count of this position is crazy. If we just count it here, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 versus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Black is up 1 pawn. The material count is bishop, bishop, knight, knight for queen and rook with the extra pawn, which is crazy. How is that even possible? It's queen and rook. It's 14 to 12 plus 1, so it's 14-13. So white is only up a point of material. White decides to take a pawn. I mean, what else are you going to do? Black decides to take a pawn as well. And now white can take this pawn, but this is an incredible position. I mean, black sacrificed all of her heavy pieces, but her 2 knights and 2 bishops and dominant pawn structure are causing tremendous problems for the white position. Now, this rook is totally out of the game, so it's not really clear how we're going to get it back. White plays b3. Now, again, the only move here, you have to continue to protect your knight. You get closer to the white pieces. What's absolutely insane here is black is totally winning. The evaluation here is -3. White plays rook d1. Very simple idea. You want to take the bishop. Take king e2. So black plays knight f4. How is it that despite being down a queen and a rook, black completely dominates white? It's fascinating. If white plays queen c7 here trying to attack this, black will play f5, sniping the king on the other side of the board, and everything defends everything else. Not only does everything defend everything else, the game is over. I mean, the king is just going to get absolutely swarmed here. Bishop d4. Look at this position. Just every piece taking part in the game. Which is why in this position, even though her bishop is protected twice, it's protected twice, it gets taken. Because Gotyachkin is like, I need to get rid of one of these pieces. So she gets rid of the bishop. Now she is down material. She is down, and she plays this move, king e3, and she temporarily looks safe. But bishop d4 check, king d2, and now the only true way, the only real way you're going to get into the position is if you start using your pawns, but you have to be very careful. If you use your f-pawn, you may weaken your king, not right away, but in the future, which is why in this position, Stavrula plays c4, which is a gangster move. That move just loses a pawn, completely loses a pawn. But the point of c4 is that a7 is now protected. See, if you didn't play c4, right, you would have went queen a7, h3, queen. Suddenly, maybe there is something, which is why we give up this pawn. And if it gets taken, a7 is never getting taken. The bishop plants itself on c5. Maybe the knight comes back and tries to create tactical problems. So c4, white plays rook d1. White's only got 2 pieces, a queen and a rook. And yet, there is nothing white can do. Everything in black's position is very well protected. Now black plays d5. And this is the good stuff. If you take on d5, all I needed was the passage into the position, and it's mate. Rook e2. Rook e2 is literally checkmate. This is mate. That's a mouse slip. Rook e2 is mate. This is one of the most obscure checkmates I've ever seen. It's just mate. Not only is it mate, the rook caused the checkmate. So d5 is just opening the position completely. Gotyachkin plays king c2. The king's got to find somewhere to retreat to. Now look at this. Without touching her rook at all, she plays knight to g2. knight g2 is crazy because white is a couple moves away from completely liquidating the attack, and you can't even do that because knight e1. The knight is coming in the other way. Knight g2 is bananas. Knight e3 is now a fork. So the king probably needs to run to safety. It doesn't. Instead of that, Garanchkina here plays pawn takes on d5. Her idea here is she's got to give up some material and she's got to use the queen and the pawns. What she wants to do is she wants to get queen and multiple extra pawns versus rook, bishop, and knight. She's evaluating that even though she's going to lose the rook here, she's going to survive. She plays king takes d1. But the problem is c3. Not only do I have a rook, a bishop, and a knight. I highlighted those out of order. I promise I know what the names of the pieces are. Not only do I have that, I've got the pawn. So rook d2 is mate. Rook on the second rank and pawn c2 is mate. Rook on the back rank is probably mate. Now, even if that didn't happen, the craziest thing is even this position is totally winning. Because the truth is you cannot compete against 3 pieces. A queen can compete against 2 pieces. Not 3. 3 together, very well coordinated. Even this pawn isn't really doing anything. Like, even if the pawn gets to d6, even if the pawn gets to d7, it is a completely winning position. Because you play knight e5 and you take all the pawns away. So c3. And watch as Stavrula brings back her bishop, brings back her knight, and very, very patiently is going to just wrap things up here. Pawn to f4, knight to f3. c2 check is a threat now. Because you cannot take it because of a fork. Pawn to d7, but it doesn't matter. You're not breaking through the defenses of the rook and the bishop. Pawn to c2. The knight centralizes, defended by the bishop, defending the pawn, hitting the queen. Queen to a6. Now just a very simple king g7, defending both of these pieces. Dark square strategy. Look at this. Almost every important piece on a dark square. Beautifully coordinating, teaming up together. She takes the pawn on a7. I mean, if there was time, she would break through. And now in this position, how do you break through with black? You have to find the one remaining move. You can't move the bishop because your knight is hanging. You can't move the knight because your pawn is hanging. You can't really move the rook. I mean, rook d8 is great, but it doesn't actually accomplish anything. So the move here, you use the final missing detail of the position. The final missing detail of the position. g5. You activate pieces without actually moving them. And that's it. If you take, bishop takes, and I promote. If you don't take, I take you. And then I play f3, and I do the exact same thing. I also can queen another pawn. And the king goes out to h6, enabling the bishop to g5 and pawn to f3. There it is. f3 is now a fatal move. So white has to play king to b2, and it doesn't make any difference because now the promotion is unstoppable. What is insane about this game is black won this game down a queen and 2 rooks. The low-key detail of this entire game is that black played the king's Indian defense, right? That's not the low-key detail. The low-key detail is black got a knight, sacrificed her queen, got another knight, and those things at least I was able to explain to you. 2 knights and some attack, right? Beautiful blockade. And let this be a lesson in how to fight against a queen and a rook, coordinating your pieces beautifully together. And then here, even it was possible to explain the bishop sacrificed the rook. But I want to show you, this rook did not move. It did not move. Stavrula Tsolakidou won this game by using her knights and bishops versus the most powerful pieces on the opponent's side. The rook on f8, while it stood there and just vaguely created a threat, did not participate. It never moved. How unbelievable is this? It could have moved here. It could have moved here. She could have went rook d8. It's almost like she had a challenge to herself to not move the rook. There is absolutely zero reason not to play rook to d8 in this position. And she never did it. She never moved her rook. I have a feeling deep down, she did it on purpose. She just was like, I'm going to win this game down a queen and 2 rooks. She straight up won the game down a queen and 2 rooks. I mean, if you really think about it, if you think about black's moves in this game, the queen literally never moved. It never moved. The queen got taken, never moved, okay? Now, the rook over here technically never moved. It castled, right? It castled. That counts as a move, but you just replaced the rook. So black castled and took back the bishop, and those were the only moves that black made in the entire game with her rooks. She won this game using just her knights and bishops and some pawns. How is that possible? It's insane. She straight up won this game, moving this rook one time to recapture, castling to that same position and never moving her queen. This is a crazy game of chess, and sometimes you get bangers like this one. This is an unbelievable game, and I wanted to share it with all of you. So, King's Indian Defense is a crazy opening, and if you get mastery of this opening, you really can win some sensational games. I hope you enjoyed. I like just covering these one-off games like this that, you know, they're not in the championship or anything like that, but they are totally nuts. Very, very creative game of chess. And shout out to all of you returning back to the channel. If this is somehow your first chess video, you should, you know, write it in the comments, because then the algorithm will give you plenty of chess videos to enjoy. And I'll see you in the next video. Get out of here.